Okay, let's dive right into today's Explicable. We're looking at a really fascinating paradigm shift, brought forward by Dr. Christophe DeLong and Connexa Formation. We are talking about the true nature of artificial intelligence, and instead of the usual hype cycle, we're actually stripping this right back to the underlying math, a bit of philosophy, and how this directly impacts high-stakes, real-world human decisions. But before we get too deep, we really need to stop and ask one fundamental question. It's the question that separates the grand public illusion of AI from its actual mathematical reality. Is AI a deterministic oracle that just hands us absolute truths? Or is it just a probabilistic parrot? Keep that tension in the back of your mind as we go. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a deterministic illusion, then move right into the probabilistic reality. After that, we'll hit Wittgenstein in the wall, look at the impending AI crash, explore the role of the sovereign clinical expert, and wrap it all up with the Connexa vision. Let us do this. Alright, section 1, the deterministic AI illusion. It's actually wild how completely disconnected the legal view of this tech is from how it actually works. Like, look at the contrast here. You've got legislators treating AI like it's this rigid, old-school filing cabinet where A always equals B. But the reality, large language models are fluid statistical engines. It's way less like pulling a file and weigh, more like throwing dice in a chaotic storm of probabilities. They don't retrieve facts right. They calculate likelihoods. And well, this creates a massive legal headache when it comes to explainability. The law demands a clear step-by-step chain of logic. But from a system running on literally billions of statistical probabilities, that is a structural impossibility. Honestly, it's like pointing at a raging river and demanding that it explain exactly why one specific drop of water float over one specific rock. It just doesn't work that way. Moving right along, section 2. The probabilistic reality. So at its very core, AI is basically doing really advanced autocomplete. It's predicting the next word based on a conditional probability distribution. Mathematically, that's PFY given X. It's rolling the dice to find the most mathematically fitting puzzle piece for whatever prompt you gave it. It doesn't actually know why a fact is true. It just knows that certain words tend to hang out together. There's a brilliant quote from the source material that hits the nail on the head here. To translate roughly a deterministic AI would be a giant dictionary. Current AI is a collaborator. Think about it. If we forced he to be 100% deterministic, we'd basically just have a very inflexible, ridiculously expensive dictionary. But today's probabilistic AI, even with all its weird quirks, is an incredible collaborator. But only if you actually know how to guide it. Okay, section 3, Wittgenstein and the wall. To really grasp why AI is starting to hit the performance ceiling, Connexa's Formation points us to the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. Now, in his early work, The Tractatus, he argued that language was just this perfect, logical picture of the world. And early AI developers absolutely loved this idea. They thought, hey, feed a machine enough data, and eventually it'll just logically calculate all of reality. But, as Einstein himself eventually realized, that was a totally flawed dream. Yeah, he actually had a complete philosophical reversal later in life. With his philosophical investigations, he realized that a word's meaning isn't just some static data point you can plug into a machine. Meaning is its lived usage in the real world. Language is essentially a social game. You can only truly understand a word if you share a form of life with the person who's actually speaking it. So what does that mean for our AI? Well, it means AI completely lacks a form of life. Sure, it can perfectly spit out the clinical dictionary definition of the word stress, but because it doesn't have a physical body, number, heart rate, no physical exhaustion, it will literally never actually understand the crushing physical weight of that stress. It's just playing the game of language without actually living in the world. Which brings us to section 4. The impending AI crash because of that philosophical absence. That lack of a real-world anchor. We are heading straight toward what the sources call the AI crash. It's a saturation point defined by 3 massive walls. First up, the data wall. Models are literally starting to train on their own. AI-generated hallucinations, and they're losing all their nuance. Second is the economic wall. We're seeing exploding computing and GPU costs. while the AI itself kind of stagnates into just a glorified secretary. And third, the technological wall. There is a hard limit to trying to simulate real thought, just through text, without any actual causal understanding of the world. Just to put this timeline into perspective, the transformer architecture, the thing powering all this, was born back in 2017. Fast forward to 2025, and over half of all web content is expected to be AI generated. That's your data saturation kicking in right there. The sources estimate that to actually survive the next decade, we're going to have to transition completely away from these probabilistic text models and move towards situated world models. We're talking about AI that actually understands physics and real-world causality. Let's pivot to Section 5, the sovereign clinical expert. This is where we find the ultimate defense against this algorithmic collapse. The sovereign clinical expert, people like Dr. Christophe DeLong, look at this comparison while an AI can instantly pull up the standard statistical average definition of, say, an ATM jaw disorder. Dr. DeLong is actually treating a unique human being. In front of him, the AI simplifies the raw data, sure, but the human clinician synthesizes the patient's diving history, their physical stress, their psychological context. The AI gives you the data, but the human provides that crucial form of life. But here is a massive warning backed up by Harvard researchers. Cognitive capture, because the real danger here isn't that AI is going to suddenly replace all the experts. The danger is that the experts get lazy. It's allowing this smooth, highly convincing, probabilistic tool to subtly dictate clinical judgment, just because it gives you a nice consensus-driven answer. AI absolutely has to remain an assistant, never, ever the final sovereign authority. And finally, Section 6. The Kinexer vision. This is how Kinexer formation takes all these deep philosophical insights and turns them into a super practical methodology. Step 1, you let the AI process the massive organizational data. Let it sort the dictionary. Step 2, the AI identifies structural tension points, but strictly without forcing a statistical consensus on you. And that clears all the noise for Step 3, allowing the human expert to step in, clear-headed, and make the final sovereign diagnostic decision based on actual lived experience. Their whole ethos can essentially be summed up in this one guiding principle from the source material. L'intelligence artificielle ne remplace pas le diagnostic. Elle augmente, it augments the diagnosis. It manages the sheer, overwhelming volume of data, absolutely. But it never replaces the lived, breathing human experience behind the actual decision. So as we wrap up this explicable on the analysis from Dr. DeLong and Kinexer formation, I want to leave you with one absolutely critical question. In an age of algorithmic compliance, where the machine is always going to try and feed you the easiest, most average answer, how are you going to protect your own cognitive sovereignty? You have to ensure you remain the meaning maker in your life, not just a proofreader for a machine. Thanks so much for joining me today.